Have you ever witnessed a judge go completely ballistic and lose it in court? I walked into traffic court for my first ever speeding ticket. I was doing 45 and a 35, a simple mistake on my way to pick up my daughter from daycare. My driving record was completely clean. I figured I'd pay $100 and be home in time for dinner. The man on the bench was Judge Thompson, an older guy with a reputation for being firm but fair. But the second he called my name, I felt the air get sucked out of the room. He wasn't just looking at me. He was staring through me with this raw, personal hatred that made the hairs on my arms stand up. His eyes locked on my file. "Mr. Evans," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "The report says you were driving a 2012 blue Honda Civic. Is that correct?" I nodded, confused. "Yes, Your Honor," he then asked. "And this was on Miller Road, just past the bridge?" "That's right, Your Honor." He slammed his wooden gavel down with so much force that the water pitcher on his desk rattled. Everyone in the courtroom jumped. "Do you have any idea how many families are destroyed on that road by reckless people like you?" he shouted. "People who think they're too important to follow the rules?" His hands were shaking. The prosecutor looked over at the bailiff with wide eyes, completely stunned. This was not a normal reaction to a minor speeding ticket. I tried to apologize and explain, "Your Honor, I was just running a few minutes late to get my daughter." He cut me off with a wave of his hand. "I don't want to hear your pathetic, self-serving excuses," he roared, his face turning a deep shade of purple. "You people are all the same. You think a simple sorry can fix the lives you ruin." I just stood there, frozen. He sentenced me to the absolute maximum penalty allowed by law. A $1,000 fine, 80 hours of community service, and a 6-week defensive driving course. My jaw hit the floor. For going 10 miles over the limit on a first offense? The guy before me, who had unapologetically run a red light, got a simple $200 fine. The whole room was whispering. I felt like I was in a nightmare as this complete stranger tore my life apart over a tiny, insignificant mistake. I was shaking with a mix of anger and confusion. As I waited in the clerk's office, trying to figure out how I was going to pay the insane fine, my eyes drifted to a large bronze plaque on the opposite wall. It was a memorial, one of those things you walk past 100 times and never really see. But something made me look closer. It was dedicated to local victims of drunk and reckless driving. My eyes scanned the list of names, and then one name jumped out at me. "In loving memory of our son, Daniel Thompson," the judge's last name. My heart started pounding. I read the inscription underneath. It described a wonderful 17-year-old boy whose life was cut short. But the detail that made my blood run cold was the date of the accident. It was October 17th, today's date. The accident happened exactly 10 years ago today. I felt a knot form in my stomach as I pulled out my phone and quickly searched for Daniel Thompson Miller Road accident. The first result was an old news article. The judge's son had been killed on that exact stretch of road. The driver who hit him was speeding in a blue Honda Civic. Because of a legal technicality, that driver was acquitted and never spent a day in jail. Suddenly, it all made a horrifying kind of sense. Judge Thompson wasn't looking at me, a father who made a simple error in judgment. He was looking at the ghost of the man who killed his child, a man who drove the same car on the same road. This wasn't a trial for my speeding ticket. It was a retrial for his son's death, and this time, he was going to make sure someone was punished. I could have appealed. Any other judge would have seen how ridiculously harsh the sentence was, but I didn't. Instead, I went home and wrote a letter, not to the judge, but to the Judicial Review Committee. I told them exactly what happened in the courtroom. Then, I told them what I had discovered. I wrote that I didn't believe Judge Thompson was a bad man, but a heartbroken father who shouldn't be forced to confront his worst trauma year after year. I suggested he be allowed to take the anniversary of his son's death off from work. About a month later, a plain white envelope arrived in the mail. My sentence had been completely vacated. The fine was reduced to the standard $150, and all the other penalties were dropped. The letter was signed by a different judge. Tucked inside with the official notice was a small, handwritten note on a simple piece of paper. It said, "Judge Thompson is taking an extended leave of absence to be with his family. Thank you for your compassion."